Thank you. And now for our final question, the national debt. And Karen, we're going to start with you. During the 8 years of the Bush administration, the national debt was increased by $4.9 trillion. In less than a year and a half, the Obama administration has increased it another $2 trillion. Our national debt now stands at $12.6 trillion, and the gap between future promised entitlement programs versus the actual funding of them puts our national debt at $65 trillion. What is your plan for reducing and eventually eliminating the national debt, and why?
Great question, Ken. We touched on it a little bit when I talked about federal spending. And as he says, our debt that we're leaving to our children and grandchildren is something that we should be ashamed of as a country. This is one of the main reasons I've decided to run for the United States Congress. Because every opportunity my family and I have gotten has been from this great country. And every generation has made the next generation better off. We are the first ones that are going to fail. And what is happening in Greece right now is unacceptable. They're at a 90% GDP. That's exactly where we're going to be by the year 2019, roughly 82% of GDP. And they are protesting, burning down hotels, and causing havoc. And who are they blaming? Their parents. They said, how could you let this happen? Why didn't you stand up and stop it? So the first thing we have to do is, yes, as Ken said, many programs will have to suffer. But the numbers I mentioned when I just spoke about the $123 billion in wasteful programs that don't work and haven't worked for 15 years, we have to start there. But the number one way you would impact my company and our restaurants and everybody's job is to cut the taxes. They need money to pay down the debt. But whenever you lower taxes, it is a proven fact that the government makes more money because we can generate more business. So the best thing you can do to help all of us as Americans is the more money in our pocket, the more we get to spend. The more we spend, the more it's taxed. The more money goes to the government. So the best way we can help us, all of us, whether you're a small business owner, is cut the taxes. We are about to let the 01-03 taxes expire. That will be very hurtful. And for the elderly, capital gains. How do they feel living on $50,000 a year fixed income? They're now going to lose because they're going to go from 1.5% to 2.2. They're going to lose about $7,000 to $8,000 of their own income. So the best thing we can try to do to pay down this debt, first and foremost, is to shrink the government. And now, the health care. We're right back to what we were just talking about, not creating and expanding entitlement programs. Cut the taxes, put more money back in our hands. We're able to use it, and then it therefore will go back to the government. But we have got to start by shrinking this government that's out of control because we are heading to socialism. You know that's the direction, and that means higher taxes. And they will just find new ways in which to spend it and hurt all of us.
Thank you. Robert?
As I said before, when you're an entrepreneur, you always look at an issue and you have to define the problem before you can define the solution, and then you just want to implement it. You want to fix it. This is what we need to do in Congress, because you can't blame Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I want to, but you can't, because her solution to every problem is government. Well, that's all she's ever known, is government. So let's attack this from a different way to find what the problem is, and I think the problem is debt. What is debt, and how does it affect our economy? The problem, it affects us three different ways, but let's talk about the interest rate. We just tried, the last 3 treasury sales, every other week we try to sell more of our debt to somebody that will buy it, and they stop buying it. So then a third-party intermediary buy our debt, and 4 or 5 days later, the following week, the Fed buys it back, which means they printed money. It's called monetizing the debt. Okay? This leads to inflation. Now, Obama's been very generous to all of us, because we printed so much money. 250% more money is in currency today than existed 24 months ago, which means all of you have a free tank of gas. Okay? But you haven't spent it yet because you're still talking about health care and cap and trade and every other thing, so you don't want to spend it yet because you're scared to death. But what happens when you start driving? We're all going to start driving at the same time, which is just going to drive prices up. So you have inflation risk because China's not buying our debt. They just refinanced Greece's at 9%. We're still at 4%, so our interest rate is going to suck up. We also have demand push, which is people are going to want to buy too few goods for too many dollars. We all have a free tank of gas. And then you also have cost push. The oil spill is going to cost shrimp, and her restaurant is going to go up. It has nothing to do whether you're buying shrimp or not buying shrimp. The cost of shrimp is going to go up. Inflation's coming, folks. That's why we see gold at $1,260 an ounce today. What do? How do we prevent inflation? Simple. Pay down the debt. How do you do that? What if I told you today I could reduce the deficit or the debt by 8.5%? Would you say yes? You take the $500 billion that was repaid back from the banks, called TARP, which was, by the way, unconstitutional. Timmy Knighter, thank you very much. Instead of using it at the Obama slush fund, you pay down the debt. Here's a $500 billion. Then you take the first stimulus bill that was signed in a year ago in January that we really got angry about when I started my campaign, and you take that $500 billion that hasn't been spent yet, and that's $1 trillion we could spend down the debt today, which would send a signal to the world that we're serious about our debt. The other thing you want to do is actually create a job. How do you do that? Well, instead of passing the $18 billion job package just a few weeks ago, try this one for size. Instead of getting prolonged unemployment, you don't get any cash, you get a voucher. You get a $5 an hour voucher that you don't get, but you give it to the employer. So now you're going to have the person that's been unemployed for 26 plus weeks. Now, you ever been to your kids on vacation after 3 months they're brain dead? Imagine 26 weeks on a couch. Oh, it's bad. But if you give them the voucher, that employer will actually employ the unemployed person because of immediate benefit. I have more, but I'll wait.
Thank you, Don.
Well, I think the question is, what do we call the $2 trillion debt incurred in just the first year of the Obama administration? We would call it an abomination. I really think that as a small business owner, and somebody who's been in small business really since about my 18th birthday, every time we spend, every time things get rough and we have too much expense and too much debt, we start to rein back our costs. We start to do whatever we have to do to get lean. Right now is one of those times. Our business is very, very lean. Our government needs to learn from we the people. Our government should be we the people. I think the reason all of you are here tonight is basically because you don't feel like the government is we the people anymore. How many in the room are veterans tonight? How many in the room are veterans? Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for serving our country. And I want to use an example tonight. Our country has walked into the kill zone, to the KZ. We're in an ambush, a regular, conventional, L-shaped ambush. If we just run, they're going to close in on our flanks. They're coming at us. They know what we're going to do. What do we have to do? When you get into the KZ of an ambush, a well-developed ambush, you have to establish where your enemy is, establish effective fire against your enemy, and fight your way out of that ambush. You can't run your way out of the ambush. We have to do that. We have to retake control of our country. We have to take control of our spending. We have to reduce spending to take control of our country. So the answers are really simple. Most of you here that have jobs and have been victims of cutbacks because of your business is suffering, people that have been unemployed, you know that those are measures that people are taking to basically to get lean, to survive. Now, someone said the other day, but Donna, businesses are leaving the country because our labor is too high. Our labor is not too high. I don't pay my people too much money. Let me tell you what happens. If I have to pour 1,500 yards of concrete, I get 2 61-meter boom pumps. I back up 2 10-yard concrete trucks at a time to each pump, and I can dump 40 yards of concrete every 14 minutes and place them. And I do that with very few, very efficient people. Now, in other countries where the labor's going, the labor's cheaper, but they don't have that technology. They don't have that efficiency. But what do? I have to pay a water impact fee, a park impact fee, a county impact fee, tangible tax, intangible tax, unemployment tax, FERPA tax, OSHA tax. There's no money left for me to pay my guys by the time I get to pull the permit. You know? Somebody said, oh gosh, it must be, so you know what? You know what's really hard? What's sickening is how hard it is to pull a permit to build a building so I can employ people that are unemployed in this community. That's what we need to do. We need to rein in our costs and get smart. Take back control of our government. Let's get out of this fusillade of gunfire that